Gareth Hughes.
Kia ora, Mr Speaker. Ngā mihi nui kia koutou, kia ora. Mr Speaker, in the last couple of weeks we've seen more than 1,000 megawatts of fossil fuel generation at Southdown, Atahahu B and Huntly Coal announced to close because of renewables being cheaper. Now this is fantastic news for our climate, particularly in the current political climate, which doesn't exactly focus on reducing emissions. These three stations were responsible for 2.5 million tonnes of carbon pollution a year, but the good news is it's going to up our renewables percentage to around 87%. Now it's important to point out this is not happening because of government policy, but despite of it. Under National, what we've seen is a government lavish attention when it comes to fossil fuels. We've seen tax breaks, we've seen subsidies, we've seen lavish jaunts, we've seen laws changed under urgency, we've seen the Navy called out on iwi protesters. So, Mr Speaker, what I'd like to say today is as our country gets close to the 90% by 2025 target, 10 years early, let's work together. Let's focus on a bit more ambition, a bit more attention, a bit more leadership. Let's work together and set a target of 100% renewables, because 100%, it's 100% affordable, it's 100% achievable, and it's 100% desirable. Imagine the brand benefits for our country, imagine the brand benefits for our companies if we were a 100% clean energy country. Already, our clean green brand's been valued at $20 billion per annum, and PricewaterhouseCoopers estimate we could be earning an extra $22 billion per annum with clean energy exports. Listen to PricewaterhouseCoopers, Mr Speaker. However, despite all the positive economic forecasts, despite all the wealth of opportunities, our government risks being left behind. Globally, clean energy investment has far outstripped fossil fuels. Take solar. Last year alone, $114 billion was invested in solar across the world. That was part of $2 trillion invested over the last 10 years. In the States, every 4 minutes we see a new business or home putting solar panels on the roof. Across the ditch in Australia, there are 1 million homes with solar panels. Now, Kiwis want some of this too, because Kiwis love their DIY. They want a sense of greater energy freedom and independence from the power companies. They want to go solar. They want to produce their own power on their roofs, or what I call DIY power. Now, as consumers, they don't want to just sit back and passively pay their power bills to the big power companies. They want to engage with the electricity system and become players themselves. However, for some in New Zealand, the solar dream has become a solar headache. Now, I remember meeting Rowley and Gail Runciman in Howick in West Auckland. Now, Rowley and Gail, they're superannuitants on a fixed income, and they invested their savings in solar panels on their roofs to try and fix some of their power bills in their retirement years. Now, last year, Rowley took me up on his roof and proudly showed me his panels, and he also told me about how it was the electricity companies that had all the power to set the terms, conditions, and the buybacks rates. Now, Rowley told me, he said, it's stacked against someone who wants to do something a bit entrepreneurial, as well as trying to do something for the country. Now, this is a major problem, because currently it's the electricity companies that have all the power in the relationship. They set the terms, the conditions, the buyback rates for what people are paid for feeding their small surplus electricity back into the grid. They're also telling me they're facing a huge number of barriers when it comes to connecting with their local distributors. Now, late last year, we saw 2 major electricity companies drop their buyback rates at short notice from 50 to 72%. So last week, my solar bill was drawn. I'm trying to give people like Rowley and Gale a fair go. I want to empower the Electricity Authority to act as an independent umpire, because if we invest in solar, if we give these people wanting to do the right thing, wanting to gain more energy independence, wanting to do it themselves, we should give them a fair go. We should break down those barriers. It's not about subsidies. It's not about making them compete with the electricity generators or earn a massive fortune from their solar panels. It's simply about a fair go, correcting a market imbalance. And it's part of the way our country can get to 100%. Because getting there is going to see Kiwis in work installing insulation under the roof, solar panels on top. Getting there is going to see communities in work installing things like wind turbines, geothermal plants. Getting there is going to see communities investing in a smarter grid. Now, Mr. Speaker, I remember the old saying from the farmer saying, you won't get there if you start from here. The fact is, governments haven't supported solar, but if we work together, we can get there from here today.
John O'Naylor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and it's a great pleasure to rise and take a call in this general debate and to reflect, I guess,